Thank you for that introduction and just warm welcome all overall. I'm not sure I ever quite had intro music. So just fantastic. I love, the energy and kind of get into things. So I am Aaron Doprowski. I'm an enterprise coach. I've been working in the industry and kind of growing in the industry for, 10 plus years, specifically, starting with startups, moving into the federal sector, working with some federal agencies. I'm actually here in DC now, moving more into commercial, and that's, helping organizations, really understand and achieve, what we're referring to and trying to accomplish with agility. And that ranges from retail to insurance to banking to manufacturing to all of those things coming in. The reason I go through that is one thing, and it's going to be part of the conversation here today, is, the adoption of the core mindset, the adoption of principles and understanding of really what are we trying to accomplish when we talk around Agile, but also that understanding of what do we need, what are the outcomes we are driving within our environments? Because I can assure you, a startup is going to look a little differently than a federal environment with heavy vendors and regulations and compliance. And it is the adaptation and application of what we are talking about in order to reach the results. And that's very much what we're aimed at here today. I'm also managing director, so I also support the East Coast here. And overall, just ensure that, our engagements and what we do is really providing the value for, everyone we work with. Now with that, we have a few other people on the call. Liza, would you actually like to do an intro?
Yeah, certainly. And I know that I met some of you down at the Miami event and been involved with the Agile community for about 11 years and just love the enthusiasm, love the passion, very involved in Women in Agile too. Don't know if we'll see any of you up in the, upcoming events that are coming up, but great to see you all. Sneha?
Hey there, I'm Sneha Cruz. I'll be co-presenting with Aaron. I'm a solutions engineer here at C Prime. I really work across different enterprise tooling solutions, focused around how we bring those together to really, create visibility so we can drive continuous improvement and leveraging our tools. So nice to meet you guys.
Hey, good evening, all.
Taylor.
Hey, thanks, Sneha. Good evening, all. Taylor Delestretto. I am similar to Liza, account executive in sales and account management for our enterprise clients here at C Prime. I've been in the industry for just about 11 years now, helping large clients implement Agile through training, coaching, tooling, and I love to see you promoting some of the IC Agile courses coming up. Love to see the ATF course. That is a great one, and I know a lot of you are or maybe aspiring Agile coaches, and it's fun to see that IC Agile kind of learning track that they have for Agile coaching as well. So I'm based out of North Carolina. I'm actually at a hotel right now. You may see my lovely wallpaper background in Atlanta. I'm going to attend an Agile Day conference here on Friday. But nice to meet you all, and look forward to talking with you.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. We're super excited to have you guys here with us today.
Absolutely. And I'm going to say Taylor's holding my spot. I'm going to see him there not too long. So no, it's great to be, here today. And, I think the conversation and what we've been discussing, essentially this is what we do. It looks at how do we achieve value. And I think, as we talk around this conversation, we talk around different tooling, and Marcelo, we were having a good conversation as we kind of even got in. How do we ensure, the mechanisms that we're using and looking at for visibility and to help us, really empower the organization to reach some of these goals that we are aiming to do is truly providing that value statement. So we're going to start off today. We're going to do a quick intro, and then we are going to dive right in to the 5 phases of Agile adoption in order to get to that scaling Agile enterprise, and really defining that and giving different examples of how a tool like Jira Line can really help us reach that place, creating that visibility and some of the utilization that we're going to be able to leverage once we have some of those underlying foundations in place that are truly going to make something like this valuable. All right. So any questions? Okay, good. That means we're on a good track. Now, what we're going to do to start, and we are going to use, today we're going to use the Scaled Agile framework as the example to show, the 5 phases and how an organization, can learn and grow along that journey. With that being said, when we're looking at these enterprise visibility, when we're looking at, what we're really trying to achieve when we talk about a scaling agile enterprise, it doesn't need to be safe. There's other frameworks, there's other custom frameworks, there's other things that help us empower that. It's more focusing around what are those core components that we're ensuring that we have in place in order to really say that we are lean, that we are agile, that we're able to, at the end of the day, deliver quality services to our customers in a meaningful way, both for them and our organization. That ultimately is the goal. So if we're looking at those pieces and we're looking at some of those core elements, what we see is team and technical agility, that team actually coming together, that team working and creating some of those foundational aspects and really getting into some of that built-in quality and starting with the individual effort, that agile product delivery, of really being able to understand the product mindset and focusing on that customer centricity, as well as the coordination within the delivery and how we're actually getting that to our customers, getting meaningful, services and products. Enterprise solution delivery of that system thinking, of how we're evolving our systems holistically across the organization, as well as tying in holistic solutions so we're able to, again, deliver things in a meaningful way and reducing the waste and the rework and the challenge. All right. We're going to go over and we're going to talk about, the culture. And culture is going to be a large aspect, that we're actually bringing the culture, that we're not force-fitting things in, that we're actually promoting and building a learning culture for the individual and the organization, where we're thinking of things like innovation and we're keeping that at the forefront and that relentless improvement and always looking for how we can grow and how we can grow, the skills and the people that work in our organization as well. Organizational agility of how we're thinking of delivering our products, organizing around our product lines, those value streams of how that value flows through our organization, as well as the lean aspect of removing that waste and ensuring that we have those lean processes in place and we're able to take learnings and quickly apply them back to what we're trying to accomplish in order for that improvement. And lastly, that lean portfolio management, that connection of strategy to our investment and ensuring we have the visibility and the right data to make the right decisions at the right time. All of this core aiming at our customer centricity and promoted and supported by the leadership within our organization. So when we're looking at those components, and we see something like the Scaled Agile framework with all of its layers in place, what is the goal and really what we're trying to achieve? And we're talking about that scaling agile enterprise. Those core components, those thinking of that we're able to have those meaningful strategic planning, that we're able to really understand where our investments are, to understand if those investments are actually yielding to the results and the outcomes that we're hoping for, and being able to pivot and react and be proactive within how our market is going, and that understanding of, are we staying pace? Are we continually being able to hit that next thing, to be that next promotion, to understand that we are ahead of the game, Now,
And
when
this
we're
is all
looking at this,
Oh, God. I was gonna say you can facilitate this through Jira Align with
Yeah.
some of the core capabilities that are built there. Jira Align is a solution that was built on some of the main pieces of the Scaled Agile framework. And so as we go through these different levels, we'll see different modules within Jira Align specifically built to help visualize and be able to measure and track all the progress across these different strategic objectives. Go ahead, Aaron.
yeah. So in order to do this, and yes, there is a point as we go through, in order to get to a place like that, there's other things we need in place. Part of that being, from a portfolio perspective, how are we leveraging those lean portfolio management concepts? And similar, seeing things like connecting that strategy to the investment, but also now, are we working on the right things? Are we controlling our whip as we are looking at this? Are we taking too much on? Are we, making progress, but in the wrong direction? And as we see those results, being able to pivot accordingly within our portfolio.
And this is, again, the different areas within Jira Align. So we can start using things like our strategic backlog to really prioritize across our multiple portfolios and different parts of the organization to really ensure that strategic alignment and make some of those strategic decisions. And we'll go through these in details and more later.
Yeah. Again, in order to get something like that, we need teams of teams that are working in a cadence, that have an understanding of the objectives we're trying to achieve, that we're able to see things like that product view and that customer centristic aspect of really, ensuring that we're targeting, that we're looking at things like minimum viable product, and we're taking that information and rolling that back, again, to level set. Are we doing the right thing for our customers, and is this impactful?
And Jira Align provides a really robust program or release train layer of its product. So we can do things like execute, manage, track, plan, do all of that at the release train level within Jira Align and be able to aggregate that up from Jira so we can really execute our PIs and be able to track them in real time.
And lastly, our team. Having those core foundational, that we're able to actually work as a team, that we're working in smaller chunks, that we're taking our plan, do, check, adjust, and we're getting to that high performing state. And we're also leveraging those quality aspects in order to empower everything else that we've talked about so far.
And allowing your teams to still keep that autonomy by working in the different team tools, whether it's Jira and ADO, right? We can still get that, all that aggregation of those teams inwards.
So the reason we walk through that is it yields to those 5 phases of enterprise agility. Because, and again, this is, sorry, Marcelo chased some of the conversation earlier. If we're looking at, hey, we don't have, these fundamentals, we don't have agile teams, we don't have, teams of teams, or we don't have some of the dependency management or whatever that case, and now we're going to jump into the portfolio, we may not get the results, we may not get the value of the investment that would be necessary to actually implement something like that, as well as the change management and the overall effect within our organization that that's going to create. So creating those foundations is really, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, those 5 aspects of starting with those foundational team aspects, growing to that team of teams, and that product delivery and that coordination and that working in line to actually say, how do we deliver a product as a team of teams? Then growing and saying, okay, we're able to get here. How do we get to that portfolio view? How do we start implementing some of these practices? How do we ensure those silos are really breaking down, where we don't have QA and we don't have, development over here, and we're all disparate, and we're starting to actually see within our portfolio and organization these things take hold, scaling that to really implement something like lean portfolio management. Because that lean aspect, to Marcelo's point, it comes from the fact that we have those foundational pieces in place, that we're able to actually get meaningful results, that we're able to actually affect things in a meaningful way, scaling that further outside of our portfolio to multiple portfolios within our enterprise, to fully getting to that mature state of that scaling agile enterprise. So we're going to dive right in to phase one. So as we're looking at phase one, this is very much that foundation, right? As an organization, these are some of the expected characteristics as we're just getting started. We have our agile team, but there may be disparate processes. We may not have consistency. We may be on different sprint cycles. The dependency management isn't there, but we're getting some of those foundational aspects. We're starting to actually come together. We're starting to see how teams can actually work together. We're starting to see some of the results and value of working in an agile process. When we're looking at that, when we're talking around the team, it's those core fundamental pieces. Those roles of really understanding Scrum Master, our process coach, if you would, and that facilitator and that risk mitigator, our product owner, helping us understand our prioritization, helping, really advocate for the customer, internal or external, whoever that may be, and the team actually doing the work. The processes in which we leverage Scrum, of course, working in our sprints, our 2 to 4 week cycles, or Kanban, are more flow-based, are more responsive, but being able to control WIP, and frankly, getting a lot of data, being able to really lean out certain processes. Having our work in a meaningful way, where we're more aimed at those cross-functional user stories or those slices of value delivery for our client versus more of just layers building upon each other. Prioritize backlog of work that we're able to work off of, and prioritize and work in our sprints and see work actually starting to be executed and completed. And then, of course, our plan, do, check, adjust cycle, our planning events, our stand-ups for our alignment, our backlog refinement of ensuring that we're ready for the next sprint, our review, our check. How did we actually perform based on what we were trying to accomplish? And that retrospective, how can we do better next time? How can we improve? What did we do really well at? What can we celebrate? That core fundamental plan, do, check, adjust element, and then even possibly starting to incorporate some of the broad-based planning aspects. How do we start thinking around what we may be doing within the next quarter? In the Scaled Agile framework, they refer to this as the program increment. And that's more of an 8 to 12 week period. But for us, if we're not used to something like that, it is more of that smaller kind of program cadence of within this quarter, what were we hoping to accomplish, and did we accomplish that? The kind of turducken plan, do, check, adjust, if you would. So we're starting to incorporate some of these elements in phase one, but we're really focusing on those core fundamental team aspects. Are we able to come together as a team? Do we have our plan, do, check, adjust cycles? Are we starting to adapt the process to ensure that we're able to meaningfully execute in this manner?
So then when we start talking about the team level, this agile team, typically they're still just working in their team level tools, whether that be Jira, the ADOs, right? Anything that supports in there, even a Trello, for example. But one of the things as we think about our road to the more mature agile levels, as well as to getting to Jira Align, we want to be able to create some of that standardization while still allowing the teams to have autonomy. So teams are still scrumming within their different boards, managing their own backlogs. And you can go to the next slide if you'd like, Erin, and then I'll go into this. They might have their own different workflows, right? Everyone's working across different cadences. As we start getting mature and start standing as a team, another piece we're going to really focus on is standardizing and creating a governance around our Jira so that we can have things like standardized workflows and fields that we're capturing so we can better start planning across those teams. So as we go into, you can go to the next slide. As we go those next pieces, right, we're thinking about cadence sprints and we're creating those amongst our teams and we're standardizing the way we structure our taxonomy in those projects at those levels of epics and stories, also known as safe features. And we're looking at things like that to make those improvements here so that we can easily start to begin to scale. And if you go to the next slide, and we'll still get all of our team level reporting as we are because we're still kind of working in those less scaled ways. And the next slide. And so as we start thinking about how do we get to the next level of maturity, and this is where Jira Align really comes into play, we have to start thinking about this kind of consistent requirements model, right? Where we are all aligned on what a feature is, what they are, what does our process flow looks like at those different levels. And as we start governing those, we can actually start scaling those across the tools. Erin, anything you want to add to that?
No, and I think, as we're looking at that, and again, think of these in those phases, it's just what, Sneha said. When we're looking at those fundamental team aspects, this is an opportunity to get some of that consistency in order to help us scale for that next phase to be our team of teams. Any questions so far? So I think a lot of us, in this room, as Agilists, those team fundamentals, we've seen those, we've seen different forms. Overall, we've seen those basic building blocks. And now as we're growing and we're talking about the team of teams, what we're seeing as far as the organization is some of the changes, we're having some more of that consistency. We're starting to actually come together. Those disparate processes are starting to break down and get more consistent. We're also starting to see some of those silos that we may have had in place starting to break down. We're seeing, again, not QA and, QA team and the dev team, we're seeing that actual cross-functional team coming together. We're actually starting to see that growth and, aiming in order to say, okay, for our product, for our customer, how do we best come together and leveraging these plan, do, check, adjust cycles and working as a team of teams to deliver something meaningful in a meaningful way to the customers who are going to consume that. So if we're looking at our team and we're looking at the scaling of what that means for a team of teams, is we may have some roles. And again, based on our framework, this can vary, but we have that overall safe, they refer to as the release train engineer. It is our Scrum Master of Scrum Masters, helping us just as, we talked about the Scrum Master being that facilitator, that coach, that risk mitigator. That RTE is that Scrum Master of Scrum Master that is helping do that across the teams that are connected within our product. We're having more strategic product conversations, more vision, more forward-looking. And that's our product management coming into play, as well as bringing in pieces within our architectural and engineering, that we can be proactive, that we can start setting things like a runway in order to build in front of the team so they can continually working, they can continually, be adding value and don't have to hit that heavy stop and start because we don't have something prepared. We don't have some of those architectural pieces necessary to continue that work at hand. We're seeing higher levels of work, as we're working in the user story, maybe we're incorporating, some of those governance, some of more of that structure that we looked at before with the features, those higher levels of work. That's what we're seeing more come into this conversation as well. And we're also seeing like that program increment planning really starting to firm up. We may have been leveraging some of that within our phase 1. In phase 2, we're concretely being able to come together as a team of teams, going through a planning event like this and really start to talk around what is our vision, what are we hoping to accomplish, what are the risks and dependencies we see, and be able to really have, I almost refer to it as that contingency planning. This is what we hope to accomplish. How might we get there together, not just as a singular team, but as a team of teams. We're seeing our stakeholders be more inclusive, or business owners, essentially those that own the money. And we have a higher level, that turducken again, of plan, do, check, adjust. That PI, program increment planning, from a Scrum, similar to our daily stand-up, but for our Scrum Masters to come together across, our team of teams in order to, synchronize on what are we seeing, what are we dealing, what are we hearing from our teams, what are risks that we may be able to work together within. System demos of higher level stakeholder reviews in order to ensure as a product, how are we, performing? Are we meeting our objectives? And then just like we have our retrospective as our adjust within our team level, we're seeing that inspect and adapt really become, that higher level root cause analysis of how do we adjust, again, not just as a singular unit, but as a team of teams.
And so now bringing it back to tools, one of the things that we want to make sure we're always clear about too is organizations that are at this level of maturity, right? They can be working in both Jira at managing these levels and being able to connect it and create things like roadmaps. And there's a lot of other plugins that are going to give some of the functionality to support a lot of the safe backgrounds. But as we know they're on this maturity path to get to things like more like LPM and have, strategic value alignment with all of their cross portfolios, this is where we'd start recommending tools like Jira Align. So it has a lot of features and capabilities like a program board. It allows us to create, plan, and manage an entire PI execution across multiple programs, do things like program level dependencies a little bit easier and streamlined within Jira Align than it would be doing it in Jira. Aaron, if you want to go to the next slide. And so the reason I mentioned that is because, as you all know, that you may or may not know, well, Jira Epics, Jira has itself a 3-level hierarchy. So this is where Jira and Jira Align are really starting to playing well together. We have product management, creating and managing a prioritized backlog across multiple teams. So they can start creating those. Our product owners can come in and start slotting out some of those stories right with the teams, and they're actually populating now those Jira team backlogs. So as the team members start working on it, estimating, right, we can continue to plan, and that's really going to help us see and visualize that roadmap within Jira Align to really then start tracking that execution back as well at the team level. So this is where we start seeing the power of Jira Align come to light.
Got it. Now just to hit kind of one point, and this is going to be kind of the theme, right? If we're investing in a tool like Jira Align, we've seen the instances where, hey, we're going to go get Jira Align. Oh, that's great. Where's your maturity? Oh, we don't have team fundamentals. We haven't started Agile yet. It probably was not the right time to invest in that holistic solution at this point, because we need to have those pieces in place. And again, you're gonna, like a broken record, hear that as part of this, ensuring that our investment is actually yielding to the results and the value that we hope for. A tool is not a silver bullet. A tool only empowers the processes and things that we have in place as an organization. I think the cat's talking to me. I'm not sure. So, one thing as we're going in this that Jira Align really helps empower is our PI planning process. And the PI planning process within the Scales framework is one of the most pivotal, tools in play. It's because it allows for a lot of powerful conversations to occur within the very condensed period. So the goal within this, and it is a 2-day event. And like I said, we can think of this, we have our program increments. We can think of this almost as quarterly planning, if we're not in that SAFE framework or things like that. But just that check to say, are we on track and do we have the things in place that we need? So if we're looking at this, our inputs to an event is our vision. What do we actually hope to achieve? What do we hope to achieve for our product? And what do we hope to achieve within this next, program increment? The roadmap of what we believe is our path forward, as well as the prioritization of these are the things, the tactical elements that we believe we should be working on. But actually now taking all of that, giving it to the teams and saying, validate this. Tell us if we are right. Let us know if this is actually something realistic or this is something we should really be aiming at. And that clear output isn't, well, here's a project plan for the next quarter. It's based on what we're hearing, based on the vision shared with us. Here are our core objectives. We have a roadmap of how we might be able to get there, but that roadmap may change. And that's okay, because these are the core objectives that we hope to accomplish. Now, as that roadmap adjusts, we are now informed because we've been talking around how we can actually do this. We've been talking around risk. We've been talking about dependencies. We have visibility into those areas now. We now cannot just adjust again as a team, but we can adjust as a team of teams to still ensure that we're meeting our core objectives.
Yep. And so this is really how Jira Align supports PI planning. So again, we have some of these strategic themes possibly in place. More likely at this level of maturity, we might have some initiatives that are generally in place that we're driving strategic alignment towards. But our product roadmap informs that feature backlog where we can actually go prioritize that, assign it to those PIs. That breaks down to our PI backlog as well as our PI roadmap, which informs our program board. And this is one of the key features in Jira Align, because it is a live program board. So as teams are slotting their stories during PI planning into their different sprints, we're actually seeing the features being populated as well through there and being able to now manage dependencies across those teams in a different way than a story link between Jira. So we can actually plan and make that commitment to product and have this visualized plan in a single place now as our single source of truth. And from there, we can manage our risks, our dependencies, our objectives, and we can definitely measure back to those. And then as we go through there, right, we're going to constantly be able to measure the progress within our different reporting available. So if you want to go to the next slide, Aaron, it'll be a deeper dive into, like I mentioned, roadmaps at all levels in Jira Align. So as we're doing near-term PI planning, this is where we can come in and start slotting some of that. It also becomes live progress, right? Because we can start seeing things like execution as well as health. If we have milestones and objectives, we'd be able to see those visualized here as well. And we can look at it across horizons, right? We can filter down by portfolio epics, even all the way as we get to the strategy level, we can see it via strategic themes. And a lot of ways to visualize it, do scenario planning, a lot of robust roadmap features that you're looking for in a tool. Go ahead and go to the next slide. I think there's some animations also. And I think there's a question in the chat around program boards. Definitely a program board within Jira Align, a way to visualize everything. As you can see, there's color coding in here, so we can actually see the health, right? So not only just the plan, but to actually start monitoring the PI as well. This is another great visualization. Our features are slotted in the rectangles. We have the little chevrons, which are managing those are our managed dependencies. We can start seeing the overall health as we go through this. Next slide, please. And again, as we start creating things like risks and dependencies, I'm going to go quickly through some of these just because there's a lot to get through. But this is, again, another way to just progress and track if we're on track of our PI execution. Another really cool thing about the different ways that we can visualize dependencies is this allows us to adjust, right? Tools are used as visibility to help with continuous improvement. If we have teams that are having a lot of dependencies between each other, they could be causing bottlenecks. We get a lot of reporting out of these just to make those adjustments as well. So next slide. And the program room. This is where we can manage the entire PI planning. One of the cool things about Jira Align, it helps make, I like to call it a transformative tool, right? It can help accelerate agile transformations because it can create good habits because of the governance behind it. And we have things like the planning checklist, which really gives us an organizational way. Hey, maybe we have a new RTE. These are the things that you need to complete prior to PI planning. This is how you execute PI planning. Make sure your backlogs are cleaned and refined using this, right? So we can do a lot of things to help encourage the right processes. So just another powerful feature of Jira Align.
You got it. So moving into phase 3. Perfect. Any questions? Any questions we wanted to talk about? And maybe the framework one we can hit the end. Just to say it briefly, and we can talk more, as we get to and get more into the discussion. But Marcelo's on point within that. Jira Align can support, scaling frameworks overall. Now, there is a level of configuration that may be part of that, depending on the framework we're leveraging. Out of the box, and Sneha, how you keep me honest with this, it is more tuned to the Scaled Agile framework, and that is directly out of the box, no configuration aspect. But these elements that we're talking about can be configured and can match up with other frameworks and really, operationalize them. I think the one question that we would have is, do we have those core elements that are really going to drive, some of the aspects that we're looking at here? Is that fair, Sneha?
Yeah, and I have a slide at the end of this that kind of hits home on that, around kind of the core elements that drives Jira Align's hierarchy and reporting is really focused around people, work, and time, right? Within certain objects being delivered within specific time boxes and the people structure being built out in a specific way. So foundations of scale generally across frameworks.
Any other questions? All right, phase 3. We have our fundamentals. Started working as a team of teams. When we're looking at phase 3 and the scaling agile organization, this is where we're really good at getting good at that product delivery. We're really getting good at our team of teams. The silos are gone. We're being able to actually communicate with one another. We're getting, pretty concrete with our, program increment planning, that quarterly aspect. We're actually starting to introduce things like objectives, and we're starting to consider things like lean portfolio management. We may not fully be able to achieve it, but we're starting to actually implement and trying to get some of that visibility, starting to be more proactive than reactive within how we're looking at our portfolio. So when we're talking around, lean portfolio management, there's a lot of core elements that come into this. The overarching is, are we able to match the investments we're making within our work to the actual strategy that we're implementing? And there's different ways of even looking at that, but essentially are investments yielding to the results that our strategy is trying to drive, and do we have that connection and visibility in order to understand that? That is a very simplistic way to look at it, but those are some of the things that we're trying to incorporate. Within phase 3, I will be honest, at this point, it will probably be difficult if we are still within our portfolio, we are still within our organization, to get some of these aspects like lean budgets, being able to empower the right decisions. There's going to be more of an enterprise aspect. Those conversations with finance. I don't know if any, I know Marcelo has for sure. But those conversations with finance and explaining, the actual, we can fund, different aspects, and we can think about this differently, and we can think about OpEx and those conversations finance doesn't always like them. They have to be brought along sometimes. So we may not be able to get to that place. We may need more of that enterprise visibility, but we're able to actually get more visibility within our work. We're able to start thinking around the strategic elements of how we're actually prioritizing and looking at what we're accomplishing. This is what we're really starting to incorporate within Phase 3, getting really concrete as that team of teams and starting to pull in more of this portfolio management with the goal of getting it to our more lean portfolio management.
All right. And so again, Jira line, making a purposeful portfolio backlog, right? So as your organization grows, you can start creating some of that strategic alignment, prioritizing, be able to push those down to the program so we actually have that single source of truth. We can do things like value engineering, right? Standardize our prioritization so that we can start leveraging some of these pieces. So if you go to the next slide, Aaron, again, bringing it back to roadmaps where it begins, we can start looking at this in multiple ways. I think there's a bunch of animations on this slide, probably, if you want to click them through. This is where we can start visualizing it again at a more strategic level, bringing it up a little bit further, looking across larger horizons of times. And again, being able to track the progress. Is it aligned to our strategic themes that we've put in place? And are we actually delivering on what we committed to? Within the portfolio backlog, next slide, please. This is where we can actually start creating some of that governance and what does some of that exit criteria look like? And we can start defining exit criteria. So as we go through our different portfolio processes, right, we're creating that governance and stabilization across what are we working on? How is it prioritized? Did it go through all the prerequisites it needed to move towards that approval in the funnel process? And the portfolio room, just like the program room, we have a room at each level so that it can actually showcase you as a portfolio manager. I can come in here and understand everything that's going on across my portfolio from an execution view as we get towards more of that lean portfolio budgeting, a financials view, as well as from a capacity around our different teams and how they're delivering. So again, a really powerful way to visualize everything in a single area. And then we have our strategic view, right? So are we in alignment? We want to make sure that we are. So as we start looking across those years or those larger planning periods, right? How am I rolling up my work to my strategies that I've deemed important? And we can see here, this work tree really provides a breakdown of that. I have this theme of operationalize AI. I can actually see all of the work happening in these current planning increments that have been planned, progressed on, and I can break it down and really see into each one of these items directly to track our progress as well as health. And then, of course, we want to always be able to measure and readjust. So being able to track to our objectives and creating objectives at all different levels of our organization, as well as to different items of work, we can start seeing everything that's in progress, right, what the status is, and it really makes sure that we have that strategic alignment now. So again, these are being driven from the top down, but we're able to track it all the way back up. And those are just some of those features that we'd start talking about at that level.
Got it. All right. 4. Got our fundamentals. We're working on our product delivery as a team of teams. Within our portfolio, we're getting consistency. We're able to leverage, start some connection with our strategy. Now in Phase 4, the Agile Enterprise, this is when we're fully able to leverage some of those concepts like lean portfolio management. This is when we're able to really start incorporating and actually working across our organization, really being that more strategic. We may see more pockets of maturity at this point versus, the whole organization is at that same place and on the same journey. But we're seeing progress in that direction. It is not only within IT or only within app dev or whatever that case may be. We're seeing more of that holistic aspect within an organization, and we're seeing the growth really taking hold. Now, when we're looking at those elements, this is when we're able to really leverage that lean portfolio management because we're having more connection, because we may have more of that C-level, involvement, because we're starting to see this more, not just in our pocket, but across the organization. So with our enterprise and with what we're trying to achieve overall, what are our goals? Now we're able to connect strategic themes, or we may have seen them, corporate OKRs. What are our objectives? What are the key results that are really going to help us understand if these objectives are actually taking place from a strategic standpoint? What is that future state? Really having that strategy drive and develop that future state perspective of what we're trying to accomplish and what we believe from our portfolio, this is where we'd like to get. And this isn't just that product aspect. This is looking at those internal investments. This is looking at those internal optimizations that we'd like to, really target. What does that mean for our portfolio, and what does that future state look like? And allowing that future state to both drive the work, engaging with our leaders, but also how are we funding the value streams? What are the value streams? And through phase 1 through 3, we've really been able to get solid. We've been able to identify. We are organized around our flow of value. This is when we're able to actually connect, not only the priorities of work, that we're working on the right things that are driving the strategy and connected to the enterprise, but we're also investing in the right value. And we're being able to create that adjustment. We're being able to say, are we, do we need to pivot in a meaningful way, because our investments are targeting more of our value streams versus each individual product or project. We also have more intentional architecture in place. These are the things that we're really being able to get solidified and concrete within phase 4.
And bringing it back to the tool again, when we start looking at the different components within Jira Line, we can start leveraging, right? We've gotten better at reducing our WIP, making sure we have the proper allocations to the right strategies we want to work on. So we can actually start defining some of that budgeting and doing a little bit more advanced, prioritization based on how we're actually balancing our different goals and understanding what that's like, right? And tying them back to the more strategic cross-domain goals that we have in place. So we have things like investment allocation. We can create portfolio canvases with personas and all these different things to really drive what that looks like and what should be influenced into that backlog, to that strategic backlog. Next slide, Aaron. So this is just a snapshot of what the strategic backlog looks like. What are we looking to from a long-term missions, visions, values, right? Breaking those down into different goals and now tying it back to where that work actually starts happening. Again, this is the way that we're going to understand, are we meeting kind of those changes to the market? Are we focusing on the right things and allocating the right amount of time and money towards it? The next slide. So this is how we can start seeing that allocation across our different strategic themes. Is it really aligned to our plan? And we can go back and constantly measure and verify that alignment. Leveraging things like the portfolio canvas, that is a blank screenshot, but then again, it allows us now to measure it and see everything. We're creating that visibility that tools are meant to bring. If you do not have those foundational things, you're not going to get these items populated. It's really going to be disconnected data, and data hygiene is a huge part of Jira Line because, when we talk about foundations, using the tools in a foundationally strong way is going to lead to more of these advanced features that can be leveraged. And with that, as we start creating some of these different data elements, we have all the information, we have a standardized kind of governed way to do it. We can actually start seeing how we're delivering. And this allows us to make those pivot or persevere decisions, as well as, are we still funding the right things? Do we need to pull budget from more to adjust to something else? This is going to allow us to have that full view of what we've budgeted for, how we've actually delivered it, and what the actual value return is.
All right. Any questions so far? So phase 5, this is the goal. The goal is to get to that scaling agile enterprise. And in short, everything we've talked about, kind of yielding to that aspect of, from an enterprise perspective, we're able to understand and have strategy go from the top all the way to the work that we are doing, on a day-to-day basis, that we're having that level of visibility, that, our investments are really being driven from a perspective of, what are we seeing in the market from real-time information that is coming from our plan, do, check, adjust cycle, that is coming from our value streams. We're being able to really pivot. And I think there's a core, one way that I really like to understand it is something called mean time to pivot. As an organization, how quickly are we able to adjust our strategy in a meaningful way and actually have that strategy be executed? And I think one way to understand that is what happened with COVID. I know a lot of people, may have saw it as well, how quick organizations, their strategy went out the window, that they had to look at new strategies. They had to start looking at mobile first, cloud first applications. How quickly are we able to translate that, as well as, again, know if our investments are truly taking hold within the organization and truly yielding to the result, and that strategy is moving forward.
And so what that brings in the enterprise agility piece of Jira line, where we can actually start understanding, again, those perseveres. Are we going to start focusing on a new market? Do we have new services offerings, right? What is that technical runway to go reinvest in different technological, that's a hard word to say, decisions, right? This is where we're really saying enterprise strategy sets the foundations for everything that's happening within that organization, right? And Jira Line is going to provide you that visibility so that everyone does have that alignment and understanding of what we're working towards. Next slide, please, Aaron. And for those organizations that do hit this level, right, we can start seeing the return on things. We could start understanding, are we balanced, right? Obviously, an organization that's very mature and good at creating their data and making sure that it is following those governed processes at the business level, but still allowing the team autonomy. We can actually start seeing, hey, how well are we doing? Are we focusing on the right things, right? Are we getting the best return on our investments here? This is just one of the many reports that are available, so we can start seeing this and understanding how we are doing as an organization. Next slide, Aaron. And what really drives it all, right? We talked about how all of it's connected to those missions, visions, values, right? Bringing in the portfolio context, having that really drive your portfolio backlogs and, the understanding of how we're budgeting and allocating our time. This is really how Jira Line kind of works and creates its powerful piece of understanding what your enterprise is working on, how it's actually getting the return on what it is doing, and is it providing the right level of value to your customers. And then this last slide, this shows you a bunch of those different features that are part of this. If you just click within our strategy room, we can start defining things like our mission, visions, value, core values, right? We can start, you got to click through all these animations. Sorry, Aaron. And then from there, we can start creating those KPIs, those contexts. We start connecting it to our portfolio canvas, so we can start seeing things and measuring that balance. Let's see what's next. Keep clicking. And these are just some different screenshots we've already talked about, how we can now see it there. We can now start investing, understand what we're doing. We have some canvassing, a lot of different features within the suite to help support that enterprise strategy formulation. And I think that's kind of it. Talked about all these already individually. Mm-hmm. And there are some product management pieces such as personas, customers, right? Some of those other pieces and things like custom product hierarchies, so we can start taking that project-centric view as well on all of this work. So
got it. So, this is a high level because I think all of those concepts we can, dive pretty deep into. I'm pretty sure I've seen, Sneha demo out even certain aspects of what we're looking at, 2 hours all the time, right? There's a lot that goes into something like this. But the goal is ensuring that the mechanisms, going back to kind of what I was saying before, the mechanisms we have in place are providing that visibility, all the way from that strategy down to what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, but it is also matching with the maturity of the organization, and it is allowing the organization to mature throughout that journey. What we don't want to occur is, again, going back and saying, well, we got this great tool for visibility, now that's going to drive all of behavior, now it's going to drive all our action, without letting that adaptation, that formulation, those foundational pieces take hold, and really scaling and growing upon that and leveraging these mechanisms in the right place to provide the right visibility, the right information at the right time in order to make the right decisions.
So there was that question asked earlier around, does it only support scale, safe? And no, while oftentimes a lot of it is built on that safe, it really focuses on those three core components around work, time, and people, and how are we organizationally broken down into those time boxes. So again, when we talk about that enterprise level with some LPM, we can start breaking down that work. And Jira line, the biggest piece is around how it all ties together with those dates of delivery and time. And so that's how we kind of create that golden thread of data, if you will, to drive and kind of fuel all of that understanding and planning pieces while your teams are still executing within their standard tools. And we're just seeing it flow up as well as flow down at the same time to drive that strategy.
So I know that's a fire hose. Any questions or anything that we would like to double tap into?
Come on,
All
folks.
right,
You're usually not this shy.
Sorry, Coach.
No, I'm sorry. I was saying usually you guys are not that shy.
Yeah, this is a bit weird because yes, we are definitely more like asking questions and interrupting. I mean, not in a bad way, of course.
Yeah.
Like
I
sharing opinions.
think that Aaron hit it. He fire hosed you. This is a
lot.
This is a meaty subject, folks.
So the great
Yeah.
thing about this is that if you need to revisit, we will have this on our YouTube channel, and you can take notes, and of course we will share with you Aaron's and Sneha's LinkedIn in case you have questions or you want to interact on a personal level or in a different level. I'm sorry. So that's available for you guys for sure.
Yeah, and
That's fantastic.
and from a personal level, I would kind of say we consider this an extended invitation to come back.
Yeah, for
because
sure.
I think what will help in the future is the fact that you guys obviously have a lot of extensive experience with this. Maybe a walkthrough of this, an actual walkthrough of a program or portfolio, even if it's a sandbox, so that folks can see this live. I'm not saying it as a product demo per se, but you can actually give it your own personal spin for your experience, so they don't hear about people's pains like me. I want folks to hear about it from others. So, take that as an extended invitation for whenever you'd like to come back.
I appreciate it. I think I'm actually speaking in 2 weeks.
Yeah, June 1st. June 1st. Oh, yes. Yes.
That's right. Not on this though, Marcelo. So maybe I have to change gears. But I think that's fine. I think even as I think one thing, you can see with a tool like this, there's 1,000 different things you can dive deep into.
Yeah.
Right. You can get really nitty gritty into certain areas. I think even as, maybe when we do look at something like this and we kind of collect some, like, what are some of the core elements that people would like to see, right? What are those kind of core things that we'd like to really understand how that tool may look like it, or testimonials around some of those areas? Because I love the idea, Marcelo, if you see where I'm going, because there's so much that you can get into when you kind of go through an exercise like that. And Sneha's the one that normally does it. So.
Especially demoing in Jira Line, if we have specific use cases that allows it to stay in one area, because it is pretty complex. The overall object data model is collecting so many different things and what drives what rooms and what things it matters, right? So that's why meeting them at the maturity level to making the tool manageable for them without overwhelming them is a very key aspect to Jira Line.
Yeah. Cool.
I think also for some of us, I have this weird thing about safe for me. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of every time I hear safe, I want to run for safety. So it's just that. And I don't know, maybe that's why there's a whole lot of people quiet. I'm looking at this. Some guy actually just wrote something on LinkedIn now that I'm about to reply. He said, warning, safe is an undercover waterfall agent. I don't know, Marcelo. What do you?
No comment, Senator.
No comment.
I invoke my Fifth Amendment rights.
Fifth Amendment. I was actually going
I know Marcelo.
Yes. I was
thinking.
actually going to say, Coach Marcelo, what do you think? And I thought about it.
You'd have to turn up the recording. Turn up the microphones.
Andrea is here. Andrea can help us too. Hi, Andrea.
Hi. I don't know how I can help, but
no, as Sneha was pointing out though, Jira Line's data model is pretty complex because it's meant to work with many different sorts of systems. The thing is that it will probably take, and you guys can share your experience, but at a Scrum at Scale shop, it took nearly 3 months to get working properly.
Yeah.
Everything in place. And we had a pretty decent Scrum at Scale thing going on. But obviously we had to integrate with things like budgets and stuff like that, not just the flow of work and whatnot. And Scrum at Scale works a fair bit different than SAFe does, especially as you start actually scaling up to the Scrum of Scrums of Scrums, at the portfolio level, if you will. So that's another thing you got to consider, that it's not a small undertaking to enter to use a tool like Agile Craft. Do so judiciously, because it's extremely powerful, but it really is like driving a Lamborghini SUV. Got a lot of horsepower, but it's also big and ornery.
Yeah.
Funky.
So
I like to call it nuanced.
I like that word. I'll go with that. Yeah. I'll go with that. Yeah, it took a while. Yeah, and this was before it was even called Jira Line. It used to be called something else before. So.
Well, and Marcel, I mean, you're talking about other scaling frameworks, and frankly, your point. It isn't always the easiest. There's configuration. There's hard work to get that working, but you can. Walking out of this. The thing I really want us to take away is Jira Line is not that silver bullet. Jira Line is not going to solve all your problems just because we're incorporating this tool. And there's a lot of times that we've seen, like I said, just groups that have not adopted Agile whatsoever, bringing it in and saying, oh, we're going to bring in this new PPM tool. It's not going to be that PPM tool that you're looking for. And there's other things, that may be able to do that.
Yeah.
But those core fundamental pieces. Yes, sir.
I do have a question, and it's basically, I just want to get your and Sneha's opinion, and maybe Taylor as well, because he's been way too quiet over in that corner in my gallery. Would you agree with the statement of, okay, that it is an incredibly useful tool. You have to be prepared to put in the right work to get you there, and that applies regardless of what tool you end up choosing. Would you agree with that statement?
100%. 100%. Well, I'll actually, yes, clearly, Sneha, we're more on the technical end.
Can you repeat that for me? Sorry.
Was that directed at me?
Oh.
Yeah, who was
Yeah.
that? Sorry. Aaron, I know you chimed in on me, so.
So Marcella, correct me, is, if you're going in this direction, it's going to be an investment. It's going to be time to actually get something like this work. One way or another, there's going to be an effort to actually get the value of what we were showing today.
Absolutely. It is definitely time and investment. Your PMO, if you have one, they're going to have to put in the time. Your stakeholders are going to have to be some degree of patience, because it's not going to happen overnight. Even if you hire some folks to come in and help you with your configuration, just like you good folks, it's going to take time, especially as you pointed out earlier, those early phases 1 and 2, especially if they aren't working well, it's just not going to get there. You're going to have to.
I would say 80% of it is change management.
There you go. Couldn't agree with more. Anyways, folks, my apologies. I usually don't cut out before the end of the movie.